Hello, welcome to Making Sense Makes Sense, the podcast that's all about demystifying the world of fragrance. I'm Thomas Dunkley, I'm your host, and I hope you'll enjoy making sense of scents with me over these upcoming episodes. This is episode 1 of series 1, and before we get to our interview with our very special guest, I wanted to spend a bit of time introducing myself and also telling you a little bit about my fragrance manifesto. I know what you're thinking, this is the last thing we need. Another man with a podcast. I hear you, I feel you, I agree with you, but I promise you that this will be a fun and informative show that really gets into the nitty-gritty of the perfume industry, and I mean the entire industry. Yes, we're going to talk about perfumers and brand founders. We're even going to interview a few of them in this upcoming series. But I really want to shine a spotlight on some of those hidden corners in the fragrance industry, some of those things that we don't normally talk about, some of those roles and fantastic people that are integral to making this industry run. The whole thing and the whole idea of this podcast is just to make sense in the easiest way possible. I've been writing and speaking about fragrance for over a decade. You may know me from my blog, The Candy Perfume Boy. You may have read my essential.com column that I wrote for many, many years. Or you may have heard me on my previous podcast, which was called Fume Chat. But this may also be the first time that you've heard of me at all. And if so, hello, it's very nice to meet you. My approach to fragrance is all about making it easy to understand. And to support me with this, I've created a manifesto that consists of 5 missions. I promise I will try not to bore you to death with this, but humour me. Number 1, fragrance discourse should be accessible. You should not need a chemistry degree or years of education to understand what you're reading or what you're hearing. It should be accessible to everyone with an interest. Number 2, no gatekeeping. Knowledge should be shared. This is a democracy. We should be sharing our knowledge. Well, it's a democracy for now. We'll see how far that goes over the coming years. Anyway, I digress. Everyone should have access to the information. We don't gatekeep fragrance. We don't gatekeep information. We share it. Number 3, and perhaps I think the most important one for me is if you smell it, it's there. There is absolutely no right or wrong when it comes to scent. When you're smelling a fragrance, if you perceive it a certain way, then that's correct. It doesn't matter if that doesn't match up with the notes the brand has issued or whether someone else perceives it in a different way. If you smell it a certain way, or if you think there's a certain material or certain note in there, then that's correct in the sense that however you want to describe it is right. I don't think we should be putting barriers up for people to say, no, you are wrong. It does not smell like that. We can disagree, and we absolutely will, but we shouldn't put those barriers up. Follow your own nose. Number 4, no snobbery. And this is a big one because in the fragrance industry, we love a bit of snobbery. So whether a fragrance is niche or designer, whether it costs £10 or £1,000, if it's interesting and it smells good and we like it, we're going to talk about it. We're going to share that with people. We're going to say, look, this is great. This is something that's worth sniffing. And we're also going to ignore what anyone else thinks. Fragrance is absolutely something that you should wear for yourself and yourself only. Number 5, last but definitely not least, have fun. It's just fragrance. It's not life or death. Let's not take it too seriously. The most important thing about fragrance is that it's enjoyed. These 5 missions are what I hope to achieve with this podcast. And today, for this first episode, it really made sense for me to deep dive into that first mission about making fragrance discourse accessible. And who better to talk about making fragrance accessible than the wonderful Alice Parcq. Now, Alice is a beauty and fragrance expert, writer and consultant, and she's crafted a fantastic online presence talking about scent in the most fun and open way. We had a really great chat. So great, in fact, that we actually did get kicked out of the room we were recording in, not once, but twice, because we did go a little bit long. So please do bear with me on this one because the audio quality jumps about a little bit as we physically jump between rooms. So it's a really great chat, and I'm really excited to share that with you in a few moments' time. Just before we get to the interview, you will notice that I don't actually have any adverts or sponsors for season 1 of the podcast, which means you get a nice, uninterrupted listen. I do, however, have a tipping service if you would like to support me and the running costs of the podcast. That would be greatly appreciated, entirely up to you. You can do that by going to my Ko-fi account. So go to ko-fi.com/making sense make sense. That's ko-fi.com/making sense make sense. I really appreciate all of your support. Now, with that out of the way, let's jump right into the interview. This is Making Sense Make Sense with Alice Parcq. Today I'm joined by the one, the only Alice Parcq. Now I'm sure you're already more than familiar with Alice, but if not, let me enlighten you. Alice is a multi-award-winning fragrance presenter, expert and host, and has been dubbed as the UK's go-to scentfluencer. She's written for a veritable who's who of publications, including Vogue, Glamour, Sunday Times Style, The Telegraph. I really could go on. She's also an event host and public speaker. Now, Alice's Instagram has gained huge popularity over recent years, and this is down to how she speaks about fragrance in a way that is entertaining, evocative, approachable, and most importantly, without any bullshit. Whether she's reviewing a fragrance or interviewing a guest on her famous Desert Island Spritz series, Alice always manages to convey the complexity of fragrance and the emotions that go with it in such an easy and relatable way. If you've watched any of Alice's videos, you'll also know that she's the owner of an iconic fragrance cupboard and perhaps the most famous wallpaper in the entire fragrance industry. Alice, welcome to Making Sense Make Sense.
Thank you. What a nice intro. Please, can you write my obituary one day soon?
Let's hope I don't have to.
That was so nice. And you were my first guest on Desert Island Spritz.
I was, yeah. And when was that? How long ago now?
That was probably Locky D1, lockdown number one, because that's when I started it. And because everyone needed some storytelling and some just nice people to not make themselves feel shit on Instagram. And that's why those chats started, and you're my first guest.
Yeah, it was an honour, and that feels like it's paying you back in kindness now for being the first guest here. So it's a real pleasure to have you on the podcast, especially as my first guest. When I was planning this first episode, I knew I wanted the topic to be how to talk about fragrance, because it's a huge part of my manifesto about making fragrance accessible. And I thought, who better to talk about that with than you? Because you're someone who's really found an approach to talking about scent in a way that really resonates with people. So thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
You've been writing and speaking about fragrance for a while now, but you started your career as a beauty journalist. How did you transition into focusing solely on fragrance?
Okay, so yes, I started as a beauty journalist because the fragrance people didn't exist. Like there wasn't specialising, there wasn't taking one lane from the beauty motorway and running with that. It was just coasting across every lane, and that's what we all did, because at the time, I'm talking like I'm in my 80s, sometimes I feel that, but at the time, I mean, I did start in magazines when I was about 18, actually 17, illegally, but I started very early on in the fashion department. Then I noticed, like, what's this room with all these beauty products? I like this because it fits, because I was, always a bit bigger than all the people who worked in fashion, and just realised what a happy, joyful world that was. But at the time, you could write on one A4 piece of paper all the makeup brands, and on another piece of paper all the skincare brands. It was so much more manageable and smaller. So actually you could look at the beauty industry as a whole and sort of have some sense of understanding and not control over it, but you could sort of track and follow what was going on. So it was manageable. And also on magazines, you've got teams, so you can split your time. And I was writing about makeup, skincare, and fragrance, nails, treatments, spas, tools. I mean, everything under the beauty sphere. But fragrance was always the thing I geeked out about most, because I worked for a long time at Brides magazine, and I knew that, a bridal fragrance was such an important part of the process that every issue I tried to get fragrance in there, because I personally loved it. It was my own thing that I adored. But professionally, I knew that that was something my reader really wanted to know more about, because it's the one part of your wedding that no one gets to interfere on. Everyone can just fuck off and leave you alone. Your wedding perfume is the thing that you get to choose, and no mum or in-laws or bridesmaid bitches can have an opinion about it like they do with your dress or flowers or palette or whatever. And fragrance is that nice one bit of shopping in your run up to your wedding that, it's just pure joy and it's just for you. So I wrote about fragrance almost every issue, and my professional understanding of fragrance was getting, higher and higher. I was talking to perfumers all the time, to ingredient sourcing people, to the marketing teams, to all the people in the fragrance industry. I just got so much information from, so my personal passion and my professional passion sort of were rising at the same time, and then it became a complete obsession. But you made a really interesting point about talking about fragrance and the language, and there was a real spinning moment where a penny dropped for me. So I was working on magazines, and the magazine I was working at about 12 years ago folded because of the recession, so we all were made redundant, and it was Easy Living magazine, RIP, love that one. And I thought, you know, I'm going to go freelance because there weren't any other beauty director jobs at the time, so I thought, I'll go freelance for a bit, but I thought maybe this is the time where actually I get to just really push the fragrance thing and just, you know, pitch fragrance features rather than everything else. But I just didn't have the confidence to ditch everything because, well, A, no one really did that at the time, and B, lots of people told me not to because, you know, it's a bit of a bitchy sisterhood in the beauty industry. And all the people I said to, oh, do you know, I might actually try and just focus on fragrance. Oh, no, you can't do that. That's career suicide. Shoot yourself in the foot. PRs are going to ditch you if you just focus on one thing. And I think that comes from a place of insecurity and competition that maybe lots of people felt at the time. But I was very aware of that, and it broke my confidence a bit. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just peddle out all those hair, scalp, health treatment pages like everyone else was doing, and I'll do the rosacea feature that everyone else is doing. And, you know, I didn't feel that I was the right person to write those things, because I feel like skincare, especially skincare at the time, was becoming much more personal, and you had to have a personal experience, and I didn't have personal experiences in those topics. I could report about it, but that felt a bit, sort of done that for years. Whereas fragrance, I understood how people felt about it emotionally, and I loved using wordplay and language to describe fragrances. So that was, I'd say, sort of over a few years, I just focused, and then I sort of pressed the red buzzer, the detonation button, and I cracked and I dropped everything and I just focused on fragrance. But the language thing, that's interesting, because I wrote a feature ages ago for Sunday Times Style about fragrance, and my sister was reading it, and I could see her reading it. I was like, oh, what do you think? She goes, yeah, no, it's great. I was like, well, which fragrance do you like the sound of? She goes, well, I think this one, but I don't know what cedarwood is. Like, I don't understand that. And she goes, oh, okay, so imagine if you chop a tree trunk in half and you stick your nose into like the deep, damp, like milky center of the trunk. That's what it smells like. I was like, a bit like pencil shavings, but like a bit damp. And she's like, oh, I get it. Okay, yeah, that sounds amazing. Now I get it. And all the penny dropped, the whole penny sack dropped at that point. And I thought, oh my God, no one knows what fucking sandalwood is or vetiver. I've got to stop using these ridiculous ingredient names that no one understands, because that's how we were all trained to respect the pyramid. And I'm like, for fuck's sake, no one knows what patchouli is. But if I talk about it in flavors and temperatures and textures and reference points, then people will understand what it means. And it's not making people feel stupid. Yeah. It's just trying to make it more accessible and less wanky. Yeah, sorry to use a
I know the fragrance industry could do a lot to be less wanky, I think. And I think you raised some really interesting points. I think we know there is no specific language for smell, which is a barrier in itself. So that makes describing and talking about fragrance a real challenge. But it's something you seem to do with ease. And you've got a really unique way of describing fragrances. You make it accessible, as you say, but it's also really entertaining.
Thank you.
What I'd like to know from you is, how do you approach talking about scent?
Okay, so that language doesn't come naturally. Like with any kind of craft, you have to work on that. You have to practice, and you've got to expand your vocabulary. And there are some words that I hear other people use and go, oh my God, that would work so well for fragrance description. I must put that, file that in my brain bank to use. So I'm always learning, always being inspired by other people. I don't want to call it stealing, but I'm always listening to words from different areas of creativity, whether it's food or, I guess, wine, but it's quite easy to compare both. But food, art, and think, that textural word would work really well because that explains a certain type of fragrance profile. So that takes a while to build up, but I've kind of trained my brain, and I think you have too, Thomas, that when we smell a fragrance, I immediately go to objective mode. I don't think about a fragrance for myself, whether I like it or not. And that's a shift that's happened. It takes a little while for your brain to engage in that way. But immediately when I smell something, I try and put it into a sort of descriptive category where I could explain it in one sentence to somebody. And I think, okay, someone's going to like this rose fragrance, but it's a Bridgerton rose. It's a fluttery, naive, breezy rose. It's not a Tim Burton, thorny, dangerous, booby rose. It's like a gentle, soft, Viscount rose. So I try and think, okay, that's the profile I get from it. It's not about whether I like it or not, because there are loads of fragrances that people go nuts for, that I absolutely loathe. But my job is to be objective about what something smells like, rather than go, oh my God, it's so delicious and it's so dreamy. I think, okay, what are the words that will help somebody in their shopping decision? Because that's editorial training for you, though. You're not writing for yourself, you're writing for other people. So that's where my brain goes to, and you just get better at doing that.
And you're not positioning yourself as in the role of a critic?
No, because who am I to say whether something smells good or bad? It's my job to be almost like a sort of like a tangle teaser brush, and I just try and sort of try to decipher all the nonsense about it. I mean, you and I read press releases that you think, oh my God, who the hell wrote this AI?
Yeah. What were they taking when
what
they
were
wrote
they
this?
taking? I want some. No, but, we read these press releases and it's bonkers. And you think, okay, what are the things that people need to know as quickly as possible? Is it a wild, leathery, bohemian, sex pot fragrance? Is it just try and put it in a sort of flavour profile category as quickly as possible, and then you can have fun with it. So, is it a Sunday morning splash? Is it a Friday night cocktails at Claridge's? Like, I haven't even said any ingredients there, but you kind of understand the feeling of that fragrance. So that's where how my brain works in terms of putting it into category, because I'm not making a decision for anyone. I'm not saying to you, you must buy this. I'm just giving you the information in a really funny, entertaining, easy way for you to make a decision, because I can't tell you whether you're going to like the smell of something or not. That's not my job. My job is just to make it a little bit easier and more fun and less judgy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all about accessible reference points, isn't it? You talk about linking to colour, texture, people, places, feelings, but you use movies, TV, and I don't know if you know this, but you're actually responsible for my favourite fragrance description ever.
Okay.
So I remember we were having a conversation about the fragrance Secretion Magnifique.
Oh my God.
Yes, you prepare yourself for this, Alice. But it's a scent that is meant to smell like blood, sweat, sperm, and saliva. It's like bodily secretions. And you described that to me as smelling like someone had jizzed in a rusty can of baked beans.
Yeah.
I just think that is so hilarious.
And I don't know what that smells like literally in my own, I've never smelt that, but I can only imagine that those.
I can't imagine it's a situation many people have been in.
No, not really.
But it's hilarious, also accurate, and I get from that metallic, I get from that sort of creamy, I get from that all sorts of things, but gross. I get a scent impression. And it's also strangely beautiful in a way, I think, because it's just so poignant the way you said it. So, and you touched upon that a few moments ago when you were talking about entertaining. How important do you think it is to approach fragrance with a sense of humour? Well,
there are various answers to that. I live with an NHS doctor who diagnoses cancer every day and does postmortems. His world is very dark and very sad, and he's the real side of the world. He works in an industry of pain and sadness and misery. I have members of my family who work in really tricky jobs. I've got a sister-in-law who's a head teacher at a state primary school, and the shit she has to deal with, that is painful. People have really painful lifestyles and jobs, and it's miserable. So I guess our job, you and me, and our people in our industry, we're just here to create a bit of escapism and joy, because the world of fragrance is a world of enchantment, and it's so positive. And once you start making it intellectualized and complicated and serious, God, I mean, headache, right? Like, it's supposed to be joyful. So I just try and bring a bit of fun, maybe the odd F-bomb, here we go. But that's just because that's my normal, wouldn't do it in a paid partnership, don't worry, brands. But I just try to bring a bit of real language and fun, and like I'm chatting to a pal, because actually when you're scrolling through Instagram, there are things that can be very sort of damaging to see and that haunt you, and things that you don't like seeing, but you kind of scroll through and they're still in the back of your mind. So I just try and be a safe place. That's why it's just always me in my background. I do occasionally a little come shopping with me kind of thing, but I try to keep it as consistent and as reassuringly samey. And there's a reason behind that. Like, I think to myself, God, we're thrown so much visual noise. I just want to keep my little space pretty consistent so that people know what they're getting, and I'm a safe pair of hands, and I'm never going to make you feel shit about yourself. I'm always just going to maybe make you feel excited, inspired to go to a shop and smell something nice to make you feel better, because there's so much sadness. So let's just bring a little bit of joy out there.
Yeah, and I think you do a really successful job at that.
Thank you.
And I think one of the things that I think works really well about what you do and how you approach it is that it breaks down barriers. For fragrance, there are so many barriers to the consumer and to people who are interested in it, because it's been such a closed world for so long. You know, the number of people that can train as a perfumer is tiny. It's opening up now, and we're seeing more and more people coming into the industry and more people being interested. But most average person's exposure is either in-store or through social media. And if you intellectualize it to a point where people think, well, I don't know what that person's talking about, then you can't take them on that journey with you, can you? It's you're narrowing it down to just a very small sector of people. So what you've done is you've really built a community, I would say, rather than a following of people. Do you think that's a direct result of how you talk about fragrance?
I think so, yeah, because very rarely I'll list out the notes, because actually no one really understands that. It's a bit like reading the recipe of a cake and going, oh, there's some baking soda in it. Like, no one can understand that. So I just try to make it instantly, try to make you taste something instantly with words and expressions. But also I'm very happy to mess up and to screw up my words, and to just to make it less polished, because there's so much polished content out there. I'm just generally not a polished person in my lifestyle, in my home, that sort of thing. So I just think, okay, well, let's just break down the perfectionism of, some things in the fragrance world, and certainly social media, and trying to make it, I think, just also not just luxury fragrance, because there's so much luxury content out there. I'm very happy to talk about JLo Glow in the same breath and with the same respect and the same excitement as like a Chanel is exclusive, because who am I to judge whether one's necessarily better than the other? I understand that there are qualitative differences in terms of the creative process and the thing, but somebody's JLo Glow is going to be an absolute sort of stonking favourite for them, and we need to encourage that, because fragrance prices are absurd. And so I try and be a bit of a cheerleader for more accessible, affordable fragrance. And I think because I include that, again, in the same swimming pool as all the other fragrance brands I talk about, it just makes it a bit more even playing field, and everyone feels welcome in the playground, and you can sit with us. It's that sort of feeling. Yeah,
it's very positive, it's very open. And I think with Instagram especially, because you're predominantly an Instagram creator, historically that's been a very curated platform. So, lots of arguments about Instagram previously where it's not real, there's always the memes around Instagram versus reality. Do you find that the people that you're engaging with or following you are looking for more realness?
So weirdly, I feel like I'm in a kind of very nice place where I don't create content to get sort of win popularity in numbers. And I think if you start doing that, that's when you fall into the trolling and the, oh, people expect this from me. The only people I owe any expectations to are to my husband and my kids and my mum and dad. Like, no, I don't owe anyone anything. I've worked hard enough to know that I don't have imposter syndrome. I'm a confident person. I'm a 44-year-old mother of two who's like grown 2 children and married to an NHS doctor. I think I get to be okay about myself now. So I think when you start worrying about numbers and what people want from you, then you're down a slippery slope. And if you just continue with, do you know what, I'm feeling a bit this today, I might make something a little bit more whimsical, a bit more polished, a bit more edited, but then the next day I'll do a video where I'm very emotional and vulnerable, and it's just me on camera and there's no special effects whatsoever. And it's nice to do a little bit of something different here and there, but generally the overriding consistent theme is that it's very accessible and open and honest, and but I'm not going to trash a brand. So people don't expect me to do that. People aren't like, oh, what's she going to rip apart now? That's not my job to do that. There are fragrances which are massive sellers that do amazing, that people absolutely love, which I can't stand, and I don't want anywhere near me, but I'll still talk about them for the incredible bit of artistry they are. And I think that objective, non-judgmental feeling is probably the most consistent thing in my content, so people know that if they like something that maybe other content creators are probably going to bash, at least they know they can come to me and I will treat it in the same with the same respect as anything else. So that reliability, I guess, that trustworthy, I don't know, trust is a bit of a strange thing, isn't it? I don't know whether you've got to earn trust, and I feel like having worked for 20 years on magazines, and that was pretty tough, I feel like I can tell a brand story in the way that they would want me to. So as long as I'm doing that right, I'm doing right by them, then I feel that it's going to be okay.
And I think it's a really interesting approach, because what you're doing is you're sharing a passion and you're talking. So you're saying, I'm describing this fragrance to you. Here is the story. Here is how I perceive it. Go make your own mind up.
Yes. It's very much like, I get a bit of cherry bakewell in this. Let me know if you do too. But the whole point of what we do is just to support the fragrance industry and inspire people and excite people to be walking down the street and go, oh, there's a Space NK, oh, there's something there's a brand that Alice or Thomas talked about. Do you know what, I'm just going to go and smell it. That decision to walk into a shop and that moment of actual, and that is self-care. That's self-care for you. It's good for our industry. It promotes connecting with people in store, connecting with a fragrance. That is what our job is. My job is not to tear apart a brand for the sake of numbers and popularity. I'm not interested in that. My job is to support the fragrance industry and to bring people a sense of self-care that they never realised they could do so easily.
Yeah, and I think that authenticity really resonates on a platform such as Instagram. If you think about some of the really big creators, taking it out of fragrance, if we go to skincare.
Yeah.
Her Majesty Lady Hirons.
Lady Hirons, yeah.
Caroline Hirons, who, if you don't know, then why are you listening to this podcast?
Yes.
Go and listen to her podcast.
Yeah.
But obviously, Caroline has a huge amount of knowledge around skincare,
yeah.
But she is never for 1 second on her channel not herself.
Totally,
and you see Caroline at her most glam and at her least glam.
Yep.
And I think people want that. They want to see that true person. And, she has built a wonderful following of people because she is just herself.
Yeah, she is brilliant. And I trust her. I use her entire skincare line because who else are you going to trust? She knows everything. She knows everything about that industry inside out. And I totally trust her judgment. I guess with something like skincare, you can be more subjective because if something's not performing, then you can look at the objectives and go, actually, that's not doing the job. I think you and I can only be subjective when it comes to something like longevity on a fragrance. If something's going to disappear, we get to be... If an objective item like longevity doesn't perform, we get to be subjective about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so difficult with fragrance because, yeah, you're right. It's around, does it project well? Does it last a decent amount of time? Those are the metrics that we can use.
Yeah.
The rest is, well, I might hate it, you might love it.
Yeah.
I think there are some times where I do smell a fragrance, and for me, having worked in the industry and done some fragrance development back when I was working with All Fiction, I can kind of get a sense when I feel things are unfinished.
Oh, interesting. And
I sort of think, oh, okay, so that's a good idea, but I don't feel like it's been fully executed. It's not polished. But you're right. It's around. It's really hard with skincare. You can say, well, this reports that it will do this.
Yeah.
It either does or it doesn't. So we have a harder job in a way.
It's harder.
Yeah.
Although you couldn't pay me to go back into the skincare industry and write about skincare. Jesus, that is hard. That is hardcore because you've got to get your facts right. But when I'm let's say hosting an event or doing a live, and I'll say, oh God, I get a little bit of, like grassy greens here, and someone goes, I don't. I go, that's so interesting. What do you get?
Yeah.
You can't be wrong in fragrance. Whatever you smell, that's right for you.
Yeah.
And if I'm not nailing it, then I can ask somebody else what they smell, because then we can build a picture together. In COVID, I lost my sense of smell at the beginning, like most people did, but I realised that actually there were things that I couldn't smell for about 18 months after that. So I had to rely. I could, let's say as an example, Juliet has a gun. This is not a perfume. There was nothing. For a year, I couldn't smell anything on that. And then after 18 months, all I could smell was like quite aggressive pepper. And I had to just listen to other people's versions of how they would describe that fragrance to make a sort of olfactive picture of it. So actually getting things wrong in fragrance is really important, because then you can ask people, what do you smell out of it? And then you can build bigger pictures of fragrances that are probably a more full scent photo, if you see what I mean. So that taught me to actually be much more open-minded where I smell something, and just to be honest on camera about that, saying, do you know what, there's no almond in this list, but I smell galette de roi, I smell almond paste, and I don't know about you, but let me know what you think. And not only does that create a little bit of curiosity for the audience to go and be like, oh, I might go and smell that smells weird, but then it also creates a really nice discourse, a nice conversation that helps build a relationship between me and my audience, because I want to know what people are thinking and wanting and smelling and how they feel about the fragrance industry, because then that creates almost like the most incredible focus group, and I listen to that all the time. And if people are like, I'm so into this fragrance for these reasons, and I'm like, I'm not smelling that at all, I have to listen to those cues, because then it helps me to be a little bit more, I don't know, it helps with the non-judgmental side. I'll smell something, I think, oh, somebody else said it had a bit of creaminess to it. I'd love to know what you think. And it creates a nice relationship building pattern.
And people really need that encouragement, I think, especially if they're not people like us who speak about fragrance every day.
Yeah.
So I was doing these live events with a retailer all throughout lockdown, where we were sending out blind fragrance samples.
I remember that, yeah.
And one of the things when we would do the live, when we would reveal what the fragrances were, would be to take that same approach. Was, if you smell it, it's there. There's no right or wrong. Don't worry about the notes. And people were so tentative at first, because they'd want to be like, well, I feel like it smells a bit like this. Because I think historically, if you go, oh, it smells a bit like cherry, and people go, well, there's no cherry in there, so it's not in the notes, actually. Yes. I think you'll find.
Yeah.
But over time, the wild things people would come up with, they'd be like, it's a sexy priest.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, Yes, it is a sexy place. And I think it's so great to see when you can encourage people to follow their nose, not the marketing, and their own individual reference points, which are also, fascinatingly, so inspired by their own culture and their own experience in life. You know, people, we talk about reference points, textures, colours and things like that, but those are different for everybody, right?
Totally.
In terms of where you come from in life, your ethnic background, your cultural background, and that brings such a wealth of experience to the table that you have a really fantastic conversation. Speaking of sort of fantastic conversations, one of the features you regularly do is Desert Island Spritz, where you interview a guest about their desert island perfumes. It's a very fragrant twist on the Radio 4 programme. What inspired you to do that series?
So I was doing a live with a beauty journalist called Ate Jewel, who is so talented, amazing, lots of like fun content from her. Icon, I've known her for a long time, and she's a good friend. And we were doing a live, and she had asked me to come on her Instagram channel to talk about some new spring fragrances for whatever that year was. And actually, that was early lockdown, in the spring of lockdown, that first one. And we were having this chat, and at the end she goes, "Oh my God, you know, like you should definitely do your list of like your favourite fragrances of all time." And I said, "What, a bit like Desert Island Discs but for perfume?" And then I said, like Desert Island Spritz. And there is this moment, I should probably find that live actually, I've got it somewhere. There's this moment where we both look at each other on screen, and she goes, "Alice, that's a fucking great idea." I was like, "Well, actually, I quite like that headline. That's fun." She goes, "Yeah, and you could talk about your favourites." I go, No. I want to find out other people's Desert Island Spritz lists, because that's how you get to know someone so well. It's like unpeeling the onion. You know, they talk about something that is emotionally important to them, and suddenly you find out about a moment or a milestone, a chapter in their lives that they would never have talked about had it not been triggered by a fragrance memory. And that's how it started. And I remember you being my first guest. I was like, would you be my first guest? And then Ate actually was my second guest. And suddenly Richard E. Grant is on the show. And I'm like, holy fuck, Mum! And I obviously, it was very much a lockdown thing, because people had an hour to chat and not be anywhere in the middle of the day or in the evenings. And now it's much harder to not pin people down, but just to get that time commitment from somebody, because our lives have re-changed again. But I've still done a few, like over the past few years. I did Scott McGlashan, who's a Blue Blazer guy. Hayden's on my list. Nicola from Outspoken Beauty, who does the podcast with Susie, she's on my list. I really want to get Cher Webb, who's an amazing makeup artist, but she's obsessed with fragrance. And I've just had some really amazing chats with people where you just find out these beautiful sides of their lifestyles, their personalities, and that show has created tears, laughter, amazing sort of friendship bonds. It won an award, which I was so proud of, because the Jasmine Awards are part of the Fragrance Foundation. They're a little bit like the sort of BAFTAs of the fragrance world, and all the Jasmine Awards that I've been nominated for or have won have been for written articles or content for other people, like publications or other channels. And I submitted one, and it was a party special with Sally Hughes, and it was a Desert Island Spritz party special just before Christmas. And I said to Sally, your brief, if you choose to accept it, is you've been invited by Joan Collins to a Christmas cocktail party at Claridge's. What do you wear fragrance-wise? Go. And she had 10 options to choose from. So that's the sort of Christmas party edition show that we put out. And it was like the best getting ready section of the evening. Like, we just had so much fun, and Sally uses the most eloquent, fabulous, brilliant fragrance describer. I mean, she's insanely talented. And that show won an award, and I felt so proud that it was something that I had sort of created. And I also did one actually with Caroline Hirons that had a charitable purpose behind it. That was always something I wanted to do, something that I began and could twist into something that did good, because there are not enough charitable purposes in the perfume industry. It just doesn't happen enough. It's wild. And I thought, how can I make this a good thing? How can I create just a tiny little legacy out of this? And we did the show, and it raised money for Caroline's initiative Beauty Backed, which supports beauty therapists in the industry.
One of the things, Alice, I'm always struck by when you do your Desert Island Spritz series is the emotional connection the subjects have with their perfumes. Was it really important for you to explore that with them?
Absolutely. That was really the big point of this, because when we were in lockdown, and sorry to take you and everyone back there, we just really needed human connection. We weren't allowed to have that. And fragrance is a little bit of, it does that sort of onion peeling thing where you talk about a fragrance that reminds you of something, or it takes you back to a moment. And actually that can be incredibly character revealing. So it unpeels these parts of your life, like these sort of milestones that are dotted with these scented memories. And you find out so much about somebody's character, someone's personality, someone's emotional breadth. And that's the joy of those shows. That's what became so exciting and captivating for the audience, and that's certainly the feedback that I got, that it just became this beautiful moment of storytelling, much like the radio show where a song can just trigger this memory of a very special moment and a very special, beautiful time, and suddenly you find out something about someone that you would never have found out had it not been unlocked by that invisible olfactive key. And that's the thing that people loved so much, because we just needed lovely conversation. We weren't getting those because we weren't allowed to see each other. So that was the really special part of it for me. Just hearing people's stories and uncovering parts of their characters that you would never have known about had they not smelt something or gone back to that little memory.
And that's the really beautiful thing about fragrance and smell, isn't it? Because you could do that with anybody. You could just start picking people up off the street if you wanted to. I wouldn't suggest maybe that you do. You might look a bit strange. But you could go to anyone on the street and ask them about fragrances that have been important to them and smells that have been important. And because it's so inherently linked with memory, you're always going to get a fascinating story. It's not exclusive just to perfume lovers.
Totally. I always think that fragrance is the most incredible icebreaker for people who have maybe worries or boundaries or things that hold them back from big social situations like parties or work gatherings. If somebody's smelling amazing and you go, oh my God, sorry, we've never met, but can I just ask you what your fragrance is? That is the most powerful and positive and enjoyable icebreaker moment, because they don't have to tell you who they are. They can just talk about the fragrance that they're wearing, and suddenly again the onion starts to unpeel and they say, oh gosh, I bought it because this, or oh, my daughter gave it to me. Oh, you have a daughter? I've got a daughter too, tell me about her. And you can suddenly find parts of somebody's world and character just from the fragrance that they're wearing, and it's an easy topic to talk about, because you cannot reveal anything about yourself if you don't want to. But if you're wearing Angel at a party, I'm going to know a lot about you, and I'll say, oh, do you know, I love that fragrance. It's Angel, isn't it? Oh, yes, it is. Oh my gosh, I know the perfumer. Oh, my mum used to wear it, or her best friend wears it, and it smells incredible. And how long have you been wearing it for? And I don't need to know that person, but suddenly there's this conversation that opens, and it's glorious. And for people who struggle with social situations, to wear a prominent perfume can be the most amazing way of sort of entering the room, but in this invisible, comfortable way. It's the opposite of the red sparkly dress.
What I will say is I think I Know the Perfumer is such a good party flex. A good one to drop in there.
Oh, yeah, Olivier, yeah, I saw him last week for a coffee, and they're like, what? Yeah, that's so fun.
I love that. I think that's a really beautiful idea, is fragrance as an icebreaker. It's a way to open dialogue. Now, one of the things that we can't forget is that you've had your Instagram account for quite a number of years now, and the landscape must have changed massively since you started. One of the things that I notice is that now there is more perfume than ever. Brands are creating multiple fragrances per year. And there are so many people talking about scent now, which is great. But how do you think you can cut through all that noise in a way that's meaningful for an audience?
Okay, that's a really good question, because I've seen that too, that, you know, I just started out with me holding a bottle in a white background, and then a very lovely girl called Rose Gallagher, who is on Instagram and social media. She talks a lot about skincare, makeup. She said to me, why don't you just speak? Why don't you just do videos? Like, there's video content now on Instagram. I thought, oh God, all right. And started off, and actually that's when I realised that people really like the storytelling. And at the time, barely anyone was doing that sort of thing. I remember you were doing a little bit of that. We all started doing a little bit of video, moving content, and this is my face. Sorry, everyone. But it was so, like, TikTok hadn't even touched the fragrance industry. And then obviously lockdown changed all of that. And suddenly, over the past, I'd say like 2 years, it's absolutely exploded. But what I've noticed is that the storytelling is still actually quite minimal. No one really talks about, oh, it was made by this perfume, and this is the intention of the fragrance, and this is how they want you to feel, and this is the whole point of this campaign, and this is why they've launched this, because it's missing in their collection. And that editorial perspective, that is because we know how to write editorially. And actually, when you look at like TikTokers and young Instagrammers, they've not had that experience, which is great, because they are looking for a different sort of content style. They want to reach an audience with a different type of language. But what I was trained in was writing for 20 years in an editorial style. So not going, oh my God, guys, I really, really love this. It's more, this is new. This is the point of it. I'm going to tell you about it, and it's your decision whether you want to like it or not. It's not my decision, but I will give you as much joy and dreamy storytelling and messaging behind it, so that you understand what's going on here, and you can decide whether it connects with you. It's not my job to make it connect with you. It's my job to just turn the key and open the door and show you into the kitchen. That's what we do. That's what storytellers do. If I go to a fragrance launch and I smell something on a blotter, the first thing I think about is, who's going to like this? Where can I position this? Is this a wedding fragrance? Is this a big black tie ball fragrance? Is this just a lovely, easy breezy Sunday morning hangover busting splash? I think who is it for, and how does it work, and where would it fit into someone's wardrobe? I very rarely smell something and go, oh, do I like it? Would I wear it? That's almost my sort of final feelings about it. Do you smell new fragrances like that?
Yeah, I do. I think the first thing I always try and do is place it in my head. So what is it that I'm smelling, genre-wise? Is this floral? Is it fougere? What's interesting about it? And is that facet that smells a bit like dish soap? That's interesting. I'm into that. My brain goes off on those little tangents, and then I start to think content-wise around, well, do I want to talk about this in a bit more detail? Do I want to give this its own video and do like a speed sniff and say, let's talk about this one fragrance? Or, do you know what, this might fit that thing that I was going to do all about smart fragrances to wear, on a night out, that kind of stuff. So that's how my brain goes and pieces it. And I think that comes with just smelling as much as you can throughout your career, just kind of getting to understand stuff through smelling. Finally, before we finish, because I think this is a really nice point to end on, because you're talking about how you can cut through the noise. If someone was listening to this podcast and thought, do you know what, I want to be Alice du Parcq. You can't be. There's the one. There's only one. There's the one, the only. But someone wanted to do what you do and, start up an Instagram tomorrow or a TikTok. What advice would you give them?
Just don't overthink it. Just film, upload, do things, listen to your audience. Don't film something for the PR or the marketing or the brand. Don't do it for the people behind the fragrance, because that's not what this is for. You want to find your audience by listening to their feedback and even if 3 people put a comment on going, oh, I really enjoyed that, thank you. That's like 3 people coming to your house and saying, oh, I really enjoyed that meal, thank you. That's actually quite a big deal. Like, still 3 people, it's still something. So listen to your audience feedback. Don't ask too much of your audience because they don't know. Just shape what you're doing to what people seem to be enjoying in your comments, in your DMs. And like, I rarely talk about floral fragrances because no one asked me for them. But I tell you what, when November comes, that is when the Sexy Church incense fragrance comes out, because I know my audience love those. I know that around this time of year, it's all about the suntan lotion perfumes, because I know that my audience really loves that scent profile. So I try and shape my content to, I just read the room. Reading the room is such an important thing. If you can learn to read your own room, your own audience's room, then you'll be okay. And again, just don't overthink it. Just post something. Who cares, right? Who cares if someone looks at you and thinks, oh, I don't like the look of that person? Who cares? The best advice I was ever given is that somebody out there thinks you're shit and there's nothing you can do about it. Once you release that feeling of wanting to be liked by everyone, then you're going to be completely okay. Somebody doesn't like my style. Somebody doesn't like looking at this bloody wallpaper. That's okay. Then they've got tons of other people to go and look for. Some people don't like my face. Some people don't like the sound of my voice. Other people are like, please can you do a CBBS bedtime story podcast, because I fall asleep to your videos every night. Thank you so much. It's really helpful. I'm like, I don't know whether to be insulted or, flattered by that, but lovely. You can't please everyone, so just do the thing that you feels right to you.
I think that's really fantastic advice. And also you've touched on something that I think is really key and something I hadn't really thought about before, which is perfume people have a thing for sexy priests. And I think we should explore that probably in another episode.
Naughty choir boys, yeah.
Alice, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much for joining me today. Before you go, where can people find you online?
Okay, so it's all Instagram. I am on TikTok as well because, I just do a little bit of bits and bobs there. They're much shorter, almost like canapé versions of what I do on Instagram. But Instagram is my thing. And I'm also on Substack as well. And I write pieces that actually need to be written rather than spoken. Does that make sense to you? Like sometimes things need to be slightly untangled in words rather than... like written words rather than spoken words, and sometimes they're really practical things, like I did a big London perfume shopping guide. Sometimes they're opinion pieces, sometimes there's the odd random foodie recipe, because I think that fragrance people love food as well, so because we're all sensorial hedonists, aren't we? So Instagram and Substack are my main jams, and a little bit of TikTok too.
Okay, and you're Alice Parcq everywhere.
Alice Parcq everywhere, yep.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I love talking to you. It's so much fun. Love you.
Likewise. Isn't Alice great? I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. She really has mastered the art of talking about fragrance in a way that creates a sense of community. If you want to drop Alice a follow, she's on Instagram as @AliceDuParcq. That's AliceDuParcq. I'll put that in the show notes for you just to make it easy, because I'm nice like that. One last thing before we go. I am a big believer that fragrance is an emotional art form, and I've asked each of the guests in this series to end the episode by sharing a fragrance that they have an emotional connection with. I'm going to ask Alice to do exactly that. I'll see you next week for a new episode. Until then, you can follow me on Instagram @MakingSenseMakesSense. But for now, it's over to Alice. See you soon.
Diptyque L'Ombre dans l'eau is a really important one for me because I wore it a lot in lockdown. I felt very, very trapped, physically trapped, because I work at home and I was homeschooling, and my husband works for the NHS, so he didn't get a lockdown. He didn't get stay at home. He went to work every single day, and I had a toddler who was sleep regressing, and my oldest daughter was being homeschooled, but she was only like 6 at the time, 7 at the time, so everything had to be handheld. And I couldn't work as much as I wanted to, couldn't see my parents, all of that stuff. I couldn't escape. It felt very, very close, and I couldn't breathe. But I found that one day I was smelling, I wanted to compare something, and I thought, I think it's a bit like L'Ombre dans l'eau. I just smell that. And I smelled L'Ombre de l'Eau, and it felt like my lungs just expanded, like that fragrance hit the very edges of the trees of your lungs. You know how like the shape of your lungs and the inside's kind of a bit like branches, and it's such a kind of cold, dewy, refreshing, cool, shadowy scent that has this big, airy, outdoorsy, like you're by a little sort of dappled lake, and it's all inspired by Swan Lake, that fragrance. So there's this sort of shadiness to it, but it's so cold. And I breathed it in, and it felt like my lungs could expand, like I was outside in a big forest. And every day I kind of use that fragrance just as a little chapter break, and I just would take the lid off and just smell the top. I didn't even spray it, and I just would take a massive big deep breath, and it made me feel like there was still some sort of outdoor hope. And it was a really important fragrance to me at that time. So every time I smell it now, I'm so grateful for it, because it sort of saved me slightly.